Easy for us to forget that by the time AC/DC's album Highway to Hell cracked the U.S. album charts for the first time in 1979, AC/DC had already released 5 previous albums. Based in Australia, the band knew as early as 1976 that the path to international success ran through the UK. After playing clubs there, AC/DC returned back to Sydney to record their second international release, Let There Be Rock. Sitting in London, AC/DC co-founder Malcolm Young recalls the effect of that first tour abroad.
That was the most excited I think we had gotten the chance, because everyone in the band wanted to get out of Australia. They knew that you could only go so far there. If you want to be successful, you've got to get to the big guys. We were going to go to the States first, but people at the time in the business says, if you can crack the England, the vibe carries through to the States and makes things a little easier for you. So when we came to England, we had rested all our hopes on it and hoping they would jump on us straight away. But the kids jumped on the band straight away, but no one else did. Media or the music industry, they didn't really know what we were. We were actually very disappointed when we came here, but not for the shows were great. We always felt every one of those kids had come up way there, and they were going, this is what music's all about. But yet a DJ would never play your track, or if you got a review in the music press, they call it Chunder from Down Under, or just anything but take the music for what it was. So it was a long, sort of hard struggle in the UK. But yet every time we came, the audiences got bigger and bigger, and the band became phenomenally huge here. We had #1 albums, everything in the UK, but we still never got any air.
Originally from the 1977 album Let There Be Rock, that's a very rare AC/DC performance of Problem Child, now included in the box set called Bonfire. Malcolm Young of AC/DC remembers the musical direction they wanted for the album Let There Be Rock, and why.
We certainly wanted to get heavier in a respect. We thought, well, we've got to really be a little bit more of a rock unit. We'd see especially a lot of bands coming in from the States. We thought, these guys really drag it out, don't they? They really milk it. What we were saying is they really knew how to get the crowds happening, And we felt we'd got to maybe look at some material in that vein rather than the 3, 4, 5 minute songs. Maybe we should look at a little bit, expanding a little, giving Angus a bit more solo room, and just stuff off the wall. So we decided to, hey, anything's possible with this album. Let's see what we can come up with. Don't feel free to suggest what you like, how you feel, but let's just look at everything here and stick to the rock and roll, stick to what we really love, and let's not disappear up our own butts, but let's have a look at seeing what we can really pull off a good album here. And it really toughened the music up. But again, that's going directly against radio and everything like that, ignoring your record company, going totally against the business world of music, and just sticking to your guns. We thought, there's no hit single on there for anyone. This is a rock album. So it made us more determined to put out a good record like that and to get credibility as a band. And we certainly thought that Let There Be Rock really opened that up. It changed a lot of music, I think, Let There Be Rock, in general terms. Even in today's music, you can hear a lot of things that's come from it,
A big part of AC/DC's hard driving appeal came from their tattooed, ear-studded singer, Bon Scott. A decade before Guns N' Roses would make tattoos a fashion statement, Bon Scott looked more like a character out of the novel Moby Dick than a rock star. Here's AC/DC lead guitarist Angus Young.
Bon had been, I think, as a one of his early jobs he'd done was being a cray fisherman on boats, and he'd gone out and done that, and this is where he got the tattoos, and I think he was about 15 or 16, I think, from what he said. I mean, he was also, in fact, even one of the early shows, he was even running around in a kilt. Yeah. So, I mean, he was doing a lot of, and he was and funny enough, even carrying through to today's time, you see a lot of people with the pins and the earrings and the piercings. Yeah, he was doing that then. I remember he had his nipples pierced. He was thinking of getting a whalebone through his nose at one point, as soon as they just saw Bon, especially this guy who in his time, was up there with all his tattoos showing, and this, he had this big whale thing hanging out his ear, a big whalebone thing, and he walked on, and then he just threw off his shirt, and he had bare feet because he used to he never wore shoes a lot of times,
According to Angus Young of AC/DC, Bon admitted to some logistic problems when sampling the charms of this big woman.
Well, he said that, his backside was touching the lights. And he said at one point in the night she rolled over and sort of had him, he said he couldn't get out at that point, She was sort of stuck against the wall.
When we return in the studio, Angus and Malcolm Young tell of their struggle to get exposure in the U.S. and how their difficult journey ended up on a highway to hell. I'm Redbeard, and you're in the studio for AC/DC's Let There Be Rock.
Hi, this is Angus Young of AC/DC in the studio for Let There Be Rock for Highway to Hell.
Thanks, Angus. I'm Redbeard. After the album Let There Be Rock came the studio album Power Age and a live album, but AC/DC's record company was just about out of patience, and the band and older brother, producer George Young, were running out of chances to get a hit. Here's Angus Young of AC/DC.
We had been in Australia, and at the time, the record company had said they had sent over somebody that we used to call them earpieces, yeah. Guys that they would sort of say, well, what do you think? And they would tell the executive people that what sounded good and what didn't. And they sent over one of them, which was kind of strange, to Australia and we had been in the studio with my brother George, and I think this was it was actually at the Power Age time, and this guy had said to my brother George, which I thought at the time was a bit insulting, really, because he said to George, "You haven't got a commercial ear." Bold as brass, this guy said it. What really got me going was, I didn't say anything at the time, but afterwards, I had said to the actual boss when we met one of the vice presidents of the company, I said, that was the worst mistake you ever made. I said, because it's bad enough to insult someone who's got the track record that what my brother George had. I said, he's had hits all over the world from lots of people.
On the eve of that summer 1979 release, rhythm guitarist Malcolm Young had amazing rock and roll resolve in the midst of their struggle.
You feel rejected by the mass media, or the mass people, or whatever you want to call it. But it's like we've always thought, there's other people. There's the people we play to. They're not your masses, but they're getting bigger. We always had bigger audiences that kept us going. We had kids who got the new record, even in the States, no success. But kids coming up in places like Columbus and then Cleveland and going, knew every track from every album. The first time we even came to play in the States, we played in Austin, Texas. And I think when we went down for a sound check in the afternoon, there was a bunch of guys in there just sweeping up the building. They were all singing TNT.
Really?
Yeah, and we thought, how do those guys know this song, And they're going, oh, everyone's got it, all the guys are picking up on this stuff. There was a radio station out of San Antonio had picked up on the band, and it started word of mouth, you know. But again, radio success wasn't. We thought if that comes, that's a bonus. But the way we're growing, we can just be a live band. We don't have to make records. We were starting to feel we can just play for the rest of our lives. This music. Who needs records? Who needs big stage productions? We were just a tight unit that would, you know, we never thought we were going to be a huge band either. This is something I must say. We just felt like it beats a 9-to-5 job. We can get laid every now and then and travel the world. That was the bottom line. So everything else was a bonus, you know. And if it all ended and we got 3 or 4 years from it by that point already, we thought, well, we've done great, better than we had ever expected. We've got to the States, we've got to play to good crowds of people. We've done some big open-air gigs as a first act on, things like that. We felt chuffed, and the kids seemed to really like us. But the label weren't having success with the record, and I guess the management dealt with all that crap. But we sort of... we were too set on our ways that, we don't care if we're not big. We just want to keep doing the music we want, you know. It's the perfect thing for us, guys. When I look back at it, it's our biggest asset was our stubbornness to stick to our guns, you know.
To begin work on what would become the Highway to Hell album, AC/DC's record company replaced brother George Young with veteran rock engineer, producer Eddie Kramer. But the band didn't click with him. So the brothers, Angus and Malcolm, plotted to send a message in a bottle to a young producer named Mutt Lange. Here's Angus Young of AC/DC.
Mutt Lange had talked to Malcolm, you know, and he said, I've heard what you guys have got. You know, what Malcolm sent him a tape. We actually had written most of the songs in a weekend, believe it or not, for Highway to Hell. A lot of those tracks were done on a weekend. Because when we were working a lot, Eddie Cray, the guy we were working with, it was all... Besides not letting us do what we wanted to do, he kept steering us everywhere else. It became too hard to work, so we had to tell him, look, we're going to have the weekend off. We're going to have a few days, you know. And he said, oh, great, that'll be good. I can do something. Yeah, so he had the weekend off, and while he had the weekend off, we snuck in the rehearsal studio. And we had a few ideas, but most of we put it all together on that weekend and put a tape together and sent it to Mutt Lange. And he said, look, I hear what you're trying to do. I'm sure I can do you a great job. Yeah?
Malcolm Young of AC/DC.
We had Highway to Hell, Girls Got Rhythm, Shot Down in Flames, If You Want Blood, You Got It. We had all these tracks written. We realised we could make things a little bit more straight ahead but clever. That album was destined anyway. It was coming out no matter who produced it, as far as we was concerned. It would have been sold at gigs by the band if we had no label, you know. We were still sticking to our guns. And then... in fact, at the end of that record, Highway to Hell, everyone was so excited about it, and they thought the hit single was the track Highway to Hell. They wanted to change the title because they didn't think it would sit well in the States because of the Bible Belt regions and what have you. So they wanted to change it to like a telephone number, the title of Highway to Hell, to a telephone number. We just got up and walked out of the studio. We couldn't believe it. We said, this is it. Screw them. That's it. They came back the next day. Oh, it's okay. It can stay. It can stay. You know, it was. I guess there may be a lot of pressure put on people to get this band established, if you know what I mean. It was just like, you know, it's your typical video where you got a rock band and you got the big manager with who knows everything except music, you're making wheels and deals on the side. It was that sort of vibe. You felt that, I don't like this business, I like music. You know what I mean? We got music in us for forever, you know? Mm-hmm. And it'll rock forever too. It'll never slow down. Hi, this is Malcolm Young from AC/DC in the studio for Let There Be Rock and Highway to Hell.
Thanks, Malcolm. I'm Redbeard. Upon the release of AC/DC's 1979 album Highway to Hell, the rockin' fury and determination of this quintet could no longer be denied anywhere. One of the distinctive aspects of AC/DC was the sound of lead singer Bon Scott's voice, which had the bullhorn sheer volume of Slade's Noddy Holder combined with the soulful wail of the Small Faces and Humble Pie singer, the late Steve Marriott. Here's Malcolm Young of AC/DC.
Stevie Marriott was a brilliant singer. Yeah, I think one of Bon's favourites, not as a person, Stevie Marriott could have been he was quite rude, to put it politely.
Yeah, I heard, yeah.
But he had a great voice, a great rock and roll voice, great feel, He was a big idol of Bon's until Bon actually met him, but he still loved his voice, It's,
That's a fact. Where did the title Bonfire come from for this box set?
This came from Bon himself. I just remember years back sitting in a car one night, middle of the night, driving to the next town, and it might have even been way back at the time when Kiss or someone they were all doing solo albums. It was, one of those ridiculous periods back then, and Bon, who want to do a solo album? What a bunch of pricks, Then you get a hit record, oh, this. So he said, mind you, if I ever had to do a solo album, I'd call it Bonfire.
After all of the years bucking the odds, AC/DC was heralded finally as the real deal. Highway to Hell sold millions, and AC/DC became headliners to huge crowds. But Bon Scott would enjoy the heat and light of the bonfire AC/DC had ignited for only 8 short months. Because by February 19 of 1980, Bon Scott was dead after a drinking binge with a friend. Here's Malcolm Young.
Bon always knew what he was doing. I never saw Bon drunk on stage, ever in my life. And I was the sort of unspoken leader of the band in a way. If I looked at Bon and said, Bon, are you okay? Yeah, I'm all right. I would have checked him sometime. If I felt like that, I would have certainly pulled Bon over and say, listen, you got a gig to do. I never had to once do that to Bon. Never. He had his own rules, Bon, but he was always in control of them. Afterwards, Bon maybe that's when Bon, if he had a great night, a couple of nice chicks hanging off him, hey, that man was the happiest man in the world. I'm sure he didn't want to get drunk and collapse with 2 beautiful chicks hanging off him, He would make it last, He knew what life was. Bon never was on a death wish, Bon was unlucky because he just happened to fall asleep with his head in the wrong position from a big night of drinking. We've all done these big nights of drinking, Everyone's had that 1 or 2, 3 too many some nights. When you have 1 too many, it can be a dozen too many, because after that one, who knows? You're not really responsible. But his only crime was he had his head back on his car seat, which it stopped him from throwing up, So I just thought he was really unlucky. That was the problem. Nothing deeper, nothing more. I just wished it never happened to him, because there was a lot of people who really missed him, because not the people who just love his music, but the people that just love Bon, He was a unique person. That's why we can sit around all these years later and still talk about him, because he went before his prime, and it's taken a long time for his due respect, and I just hope it all comes in a correct way now for him. I hope he gets put up there, because me and Angus were talking. There's guys like Jim Morrison who become legends and household names. Bon's a legend. He's household name in the rock world, but not right across the board. But he should be, because it's like Angus said, Bon wasn't a rock star like your Jim Morrisons and people like this. He said Bon was a rock and roller. He lived that lifestyle. He didn't act that lifestyle. He was what he was, you know? And it's so rare to have something that's real be real, for real. You know what I mean? If you make a movie of one, it's got to be real.